Hello everyone, my name is Winters and welcome to Winters Budget Builds. In today's episode we are going to cover the Fleet Eclipse Intel Cruiser T6. This was actually one of the first T6 ships to come out in the game. It was released way back when the Delta Rising expansion came out, which was the second expansion that was released for Star Trek Online. In this episode, we are going to start off with weapons, gear, and equipment. Then we are going to move on to the skill tree. From there, we will move on to the traits and bridge officer abilities, and then the bridge officers themselves, and then the duty officers. Finally, we will finish up the episode by playing a patrol mission so that you guys can see what the build is like in battle. And of course I will give you guys a fun factor rating for this ship as well. Now, before we go any further, I want to give a special shout out to one of the Priority 1 Armada members, and that's at Crypticop. Because it wasn't actually me that came up with the premise for this build. I came up with the build, but the premise for the build. So the premise for this build is BSG, Battlestar Galactica. And if you have the Eclipse and the Phantom Intel ships, alright, you can replace the nacelles. See the nacelles here? You can replace the nacelles with the Phantom nacelles. And if you have a look from the back here, it's kind of like the Battlestar Galactica. Now, being that the premise is that it's Battlestar Galactica, the entire build is turrets. So it wasn't actually me that came up with the premise. It was Ash Crypticop who came up with this. So a special shout out to him for coming up with this idea. But the rest of it, the build is mine. So yeah, let's jump into it. Right, first off, we've got some rep gear. We have the Advanced Inhibiting Phaser Heavy Turret, which comes from the Gamma Reputation. This is paired with the the Ordnance Accelerator, which we'll talk about in a little while. The two-piece set bonus for having those two items is 10% phaser weapon damage. Of course, there's Chronoton weapon damage, which is actually anti-proton. There's Polaron, and there's flight turn rate, which is great because we're in a cruiser. The next weapon that we have is the Heavy Biomolecular Phaser Turret, which comes from Undine Rep, or 8472 Rep. This is paired with the Hydrodynamics Compensator, and the two-piece set bonus for this is plus 7.5% bonus Phaser, Disruptor, Plasma, and Tetrion energy weapon damage. 2% increased chance for biomolecular weapons to apply their incubation debuffs. So basically another 7.5% phaser damage, because this is a phaser damage build. Then the rest of the turrets on the ship are Advanced Fleet Phaser Turrets. They're purchased from the Fleet Starbase. You need a Tier 2 Industrial Fabricator to be able to purchase Advanced Fleet Phaser Turrets. The reason why I've gone with Advanced over Elite is that there's actually higher damage from the Advanced. Anyone that's been playing the game for a long time will be well aware of that. Finally, in terms of weapons, I also have the Borg Kinetic Cutting Beam, which is paired with the Assimilated Module, and the two-piece set bonus for that is 2.5% chance when firing energy weapons to gain Omega Weapon Amplifier for 5 seconds, and that gives plus 10 weapon power, plus 500 weapon power drain resistance, and minus 500% weapon power cost. So basically, for one firing cycle, you will fire your weapons at full power, doing much more damage. This is a favourite of mine. It's in an awful lot of my builds. In fact, nearly every one of my builds. So it's a big favourite of mine. The Kinetic Cutting Beam with the Assimilated Module. Alright, we'll go on to equipment. I have the two-piece Iconian set. We've got the Iconian Resistance Deflector Array. All the stats are benefiting me here. 21.3 kinetic damage resistance rating, 5 shield power setting, 21.3 starship shield restoration, 31.9 starship hull capacity, and 42.5 starship shield capacity. That is paired with the Iconium Resistance Hyper Impulse engines. And if we have a look at the 2-piece set bonus, that gives Distribute Shields applies 203.4 shield regeneration for 5 seconds to each facing once triggered, goes on 30-second cooldown. Skills that affect this ability, Starship Shield Restoration. So basically, if you click on your ship here, okay, it will redistribute your shields and you will get a free shield heal. This is what this is actually here now. This is a shield heal, okay? Yeah, it's a free shield heal, and believe me, it can really make a difference in a crunch. Very useful to have. Adds a little bit of survivability for you. Next up, I've got another 2-piece that I'm going for, which is the Bajor Defense Hyper Injection Warp Core and the Bajor Defense Covariant Shield Array. Now, normally I would go with the shield and the Bajorn engine, but I decided just to try it out, the Bajorn Warp Core, and I put an ultimate tech upgrade on it, and I upgraded it to Mark 15 Epic, just to try it out. But normally I would go with Bajorn Shield, Bajorn Impulse Engine, Iconium Deflector, Iconium Warp Core. That's what I would normally go with. But it's not that much of a difference. It's not game changing, okay? The 2-piece set bonus for the any 2 pieces of the Bajorn set is plus 19% phaser damage. Of course, that also applies for Disruptor and Plasma as well, which is huge. It's absolutely huge. So yeah, you definitely want to stack these things up, and it makes a big difference. In terms of devices, I've got the Red Matter Capacitor, which comes from the Phoenix Prize Pack. You need a very rare token to get that. I've got the Subspace Field Modulator, which is a damage resistance rate, plus all damage resistance rating for 15 seconds. That comes from the mission Skirmish, which can be found in the available tab of the mission journal right here. And then I have the Beacon of Kalis, which was an event reward some time ago. I actually believe it's coming out tomorrow. At the time of this recording, it's coming out tomorrow in the Z Store. There's going to be a new section in the Z Store called Muds something. Hardcore Fenton Mud from Star Trek, the original series. There's a new subsection store being opened up with all these things being put into it. So that's where you can get that. It's basically a distress call, and you get a couple of pets that arrive and help you out. Whoop-de-doo. It's not game changing. Right, moving on to consoles. Another favorite of mine, the Universal Plasmonic Leech. Basically, in a nutshell, it takes power from your currently selected target, and it applies that power to all 4 of your subsystems, increasing your overall power levels across all 4 subsystems. This is your weapons, shields, engines, and auxiliary subsystems. That is going on the exchange at the moment for approximately 4 million EC. So not very expensive at all. Next up, we have the Prolonged Engagement Power Dynamo, which is obtained through the Phoenix Prize Pack now. You need a very rare token for that. Every 5 seconds in combat, gain 1 stack of Power Dynamo. Power Dynamo is +1 all power levels, and it has a maximum of +10. So you have 4 different subsystems, and each one can be increased by 10. So that's 40 points. 40. Excuse me, my voice seems to be going a little bit here. 40 points across all 4 subsystems. Which is a huge power increase. It's absolutely massive. Yeah, so I'm just there is a 2 and 3 piece set bonus, but I'm not using that because this is a BSG build. It needs turrets. Other builds, actually, I'll tell you this now. Other builds, other phaser builds, will be very similar to this one in terms of consoles, but the weapons will be the only thing that will be different. So you'll see a lot of these consoles being used over and over again in many other builds that I'm going to release in the future. Anyway, next up we have the Ordnance Accelerator, which we are using for the plus 26.3 phaser directed energy weapon damage. As we said earlier, we're using this for a 2-piece set bonus, which is an additional plus 10% phaser weapon damage. Excuse me. That comes from the Gamma Reputation. That's where that comes from. It comes from Gamma Reputation. Then we have the Hydrodynamics Compensator. We're using this for the 2-piece set bonus, which we talked about earlier, which was plus 7.5 phaser damage. And we're also getting some power from it. We're getting increased accuracy, and we're getting turn rate, which is great because we're in a cruiser. So anything to boost our turn rate is going to help. That comes from the Undine Rep, or 8472 Reputation. Next up, we have the ZPM, or 0 Point Energy Conduit, which comes from Romulan Rep. We're using this because it gives plus 2.1 power to all 4 subsystems. It also increases our Starship Drain expertise. It's given us some critical chance as well. Next up, another favourite of mine, the Assimilated Module. We're using this in conjunction with the Kinetic Cutting Beam. We're getting some critical chance, we're getting some critical severity, we're getting some weapons power, we're getting damage control, and we're getting control expertise. The first 4 are really the best ones there. That comes from Omega Rep. Then we have the Quantum Phase Converter, which gives plus 25% phaser damage. It also gives some auxiliary power and plus 37.5 Starship Drain expertise. Hot Restart automatically removes auxiliary power disable conditions, can occur up to once per 60 seconds. The Quantum Phase Converter comes from the story mission Sunrise, which I believe is in the Future Proof. There we are. Sunrise. That's where you get the Quantum Phase Converter. Okay. Next up is 4 Tactical Consoles Vulnerability Locator Phaser Variant. These are from the Fleet Spire. They are absolutely fantastic. We go for the critical chance ones. When they're fully upgraded, like you can see, this one here is Mark 15 Epic. You get plus 2 critical chance with each one. These ones are still at ultra rare. They're not epic yet, but it's not game changing. Don't worry about that. The reason why you go with critical chance is because if you go with crit D modifiers on your weapons, if you look, alright, look down around here when I mouse over for the tooltip again, you can see here we're getting plus 80% critical severity, okay? Because we have 4 crit D modifiers on this weapon, alright? And that's how I typically mod out my weapons. It's either crit D or damage, alright? So you can see here again, we've got 3 crit D modifiers, we've got 60% crit severity. These ones actually haven't changed. They're crit D, damage times 3. They're the same mods as when I bought them from the fleet. But if you want, you could convert them and mod them into crit D times 4 or damage times 4. Whatever you wanted. So yeah, basically, in a nutshell, you get a bigger bang for your buck if you put crit D modifiers on each weapon, okay? And then you jack up your crit chance as much as you can with your tactical consoles. Because if you went for the Vulnerability Exploiter, which basically gives crit severity or crit D damage on your tactical consoles, you only get like 9 point something % for a fully upgraded Mark 15 Epic tactical console. So bigger bang for your buck putting your crit D modifiers on your weapons, and try and jack up your crit chance as much as you possibly can with your tactical consoles. Right, next we're going to move on to the skill tree. We have 3 points in energy weapons training, basically just increases the damage of energy weapons. We have 2 points in shield capacity, which is pretty self-explanatory, increases the capacity of your shields. We have 1 point in shield restoration. This increases your healing, shield restoration level. Sorry, my phone, I completely forgot to put that on silent. I'll do that right now. Next up we have hull capacity, 2 points in that, pretty self-explanatory, increases the capacity of your hull. And then we have hull restoration, which increases the healing bonus for restoring your hull. The reason why I've got 2 points in the capacity ones is I believe it's better to be looking at something instead of looking for something, so that's my thinking on it. Next up we have 2 points in electroplasma system, which increases your power transfer rate. So if you're transferring power from any one of these systems to another system, or if let's say you're in full impulse and you come out of full impulse and you're going into battle, it increases the rate at which your weapons, your power levels regenerate. That's what that does. Then we have 2 points in drain expertise. This is for the plasmonic leech that we've got on the ship. Increases the amount of power that we take from our target and we ultimately benefit from. I have 2 points in targeting expertise, which increases our accuracy, and we have 2 points in defensive maneuvering, which increases our defense rating. The higher your defense rating, the more likely it is that you will be missed when enemies fire upon you. In the commander tier, we have 3 points in weapon specialization, which is an increase to your critical chance. We have 3 points in weapon amplification, which is an increase to your critical severity. We have 3 points in shield hardness, which is, it's pretty self-explanatory. It makes your shields harder, so they're tougher to take down. Then we have 1 point in damage control, which basically increases the rate at which your hull regenerates over time, both in and out of combat. Then we have 2 points in hull plating. Hull plating increases your damage resistance rating against energy weapons. I have not got a point in ablative hull plating because that increases your damage resistance against projectile weapons. And projectile weapons are pretty crap when they hit shields, and I always aim to have my shields up and never fully depleted. So that's why I don't put a point there. Next up, we have defensive subsystem tuning, shield subsystem performance, auxiliary subsystem performance, offensive subsystem tuning, weapon subsystem performance, and engine subsystem performance, all of which gives bonus power levels to all 4 subsystems. Then we have 3 points in long-range targeting. This basically decreases the penalty that is incurred by the distance at which you fire at your target. So the greater the distance you are from your target, the greater the penalty, or the less effective your weapons will be against that target. The closer you get to your target, the more effective your weapons will be. And this decreases that penalty, so your weapons are more potent over longer distances. Then we have hull penetration, which basically gets past the armor on a ship and damages the hull. Then we have shield penetration, which is basically getting past an enemy's shields and directly onto the hull. We have 3 points in that as well. And finally, we have warp core potential and improved warp core potential, both of which give additional power to all 4 subsystems. Typically a fairly standard skill tree. Anyone that's been following my series or seen any of my Let's Plays will be very familiar with this kind of layout for a skill tree. you don't want to divide yourself too much. I'm not doing any exotic damage abilities, so I don't have any points in exotic particle generators. I'm not using tractor beams, so I don't need any points in control expertise or anything like that. So a pretty standard skill tree, to be honest with you guys. Right, okay, that is that. Next up, we are going to talk about in our specializations. I am using the Intelligence Officer specialization as my primary. I have 30 points spent in it. With 30 points spent, it gives a plus 15 defensive rating. And it also increases your dodge chance on ground by 15%. And as a secondary, I'm using Strategist. Strategist gives points spent in Strategist 15, current bonus space 10%, maximum shield capacity. That's it. Yeah, Strategist gives additional shield capacity with the more points you have spent in it. So yeah, I'm using Intelligence and Strategist. You could use Pilot. You could totally use Pilot. Benefit from the increased turn rate. Pilot is a really great one. Another favorite of mine. But for this ship, because it's an intel ship, I decided to go with Intelligence Officer. Next up, traits. Okay, now one thing I want to point out here before we get into this is I have not upgraded my traits. Okay, so all of these, no, not all of these traits. Most of these traits can be upgraded at the fleet K13 fleet holding and can be increased even further. So first one is accurate. That can be increased to superior accurate, and instead of a plus 10 accuracy rating, it's a plus 15 accuracy rating, if I remember correctly. Next up after that then we have advanced rapid support. Reduces the recharge time of your career specific abilities by 67%. Then we have Bulkhead Technician, plus 10% maximum hull hit points. Then we have Cannon Training, plus 5% bonus cannon weapon damage. Turrets fall under the cannon category, in case you were wondering. Then we have Elusive, which is a plus 10 defense rating. Then we have Innocuous, which is minus threat and plus crit severity. Then we have Last Ditch Effort, plus 40 all damage resistance rating while go down fighting is active. Then we have Living Hull, plus 15% hull regeneration while in combat, doubled out of combat. And Living Hull comes from the story mission Surface Tension, which is in the Solid Dyson Sphere story arc and is the bottom mission here. This is the mission it comes from, Living Hull. Then we have Operative, which is basically plus crit chance and crit severity. And finally then we have Techie, which is an increase to hull restoration and regen. Moving on to starship traits. First up, we have Desperate Repairs. Desperate Repairs comes from the Tier 6 Guardian starship, which is a Federation starship. When critically hit, grant 1 desperation counter for 120 seconds. At 3 counters, to self, 5,000 shield regeneration applies once to each shield facing, and plus 25,000 hit points. Prevents gaining desperation counters for 60 seconds. So large shield and hull heal after 3 incoming critical hits. This is a great trait for survivability. It's a favorite of mine. I like survivability. I like sticking in the fight for longer periods of time, yeah, it's a great trait. I really like it. Next up we have Improved Temporal Insight. This comes from the Delta recruitment events, so depending on when you're watching this, you may or may not have access to this trait. It basically gives temporary immunity from hull heals, so when you heal yourself you become immune to damage. Then we have Subworth Sheath, which comes from the Icarus Pilot Escort. Higher speed grants armor penetration, so the faster you're traveling, the more armor penetration your weapons have, which is a really great trait. Then we have superior pedal to the metal. Plus 3% all damage bonus per 2 seconds spent at full throttle, up to 30% max. All bonuses immediately lost if your throttle is dropped. So basically, increased damage from full throttle. Very similar to the Subworth sheath. Finally, for Starship traits, because this is a turret build, or the Battlestar Galactica build, we had to go with Withering Barrage. Which is available from the T6 Valiant. I've already done a build video on that particular ship. It increases the duration of cannon scatter volley by 4 seconds, meaning that instead of the normal 2 volleys that you can get fired for each activation of cannon scatter volley, you can now get 3 volleys fired off within a single activation of cannon scatter volley. A great Starship trait. Moving on to space reputation. First up, we have magnified firepower, which comes from gamma reputation. This is rank 2, plus all weapon damage. Next up, we have enhanced shield penetration, rank 2. Minor shield penetration, which comes from Nukara rep. Then we have enhanced armor penetration, rank 2. Ship weapons have increased armor penetration, and this comes from Delta reputation. Next up, we have destabilizing phase array, rank 2. Trigger damage immunity when hit, and this comes from Iconian rep. I love this trait. When taking damage, become immune to damage for 3.8 seconds. Can occur at most once per 60 seconds. So once every minute, you are immune to all damage for 4 seconds. It can really help, because it's a passive, and just once every minute you're immune to damage, and it can be just enough to keep you in the fight that little bit longer. Finally, for space reputation, we have advanced targeting systems, rank 2, increased crit severity, which comes from the Dyson reputation. It's a massive 20% to crit severity, which is fantastic. Active reputation traits. First up, we have anti-time entanglement singularity, rank 2. Shrinking AoE damage hazard slows and holds foes, which is a space active. Well, they're all space actives. Then we have biomolecular shield generator, rank 2, which is basically a shield heal in space. It's great. Deploy sensor interference platform, rank 2. Deploy sensor interference platform taunt and damage debuff. Then we have quantum singularity manipulation, rank 2, cloaking and enhanced science powers. And finally we have retracting tetrion cascade, rank 2, chain tetrion damage. So they're the active reputations that we've got selected. Right, moving on. Next up, we are going to talk about bridge officer abilities. So first up, we have Chemosite Laced Weaponry 1 in our Ensign Station. Enhance your weapons for 10 seconds to apply on hit 1649.1 radiation damage to foes in 1 kilometer radius. Minus 10 damage resistance rating to foes in 1 kilometer radius. Energy weapons have 10% chance to trigger, but projectiles always cause explosion. Alright. This was very popular a couple of years ago when it first came out. In fact, it was actually OP. Yeah, it was really, like, this stuff was going for ridiculous prices on the exchange, but it's since come down an awful lot. Actually, I should have, I didn't actually research the price of that. Trust me, it's not that expensive anyway. In our Lieutenant Commander Tactical, we have a Tactical Team 1, which is, oh god, excuse me, it automatically balances your shields to the side that's taking damage. Then we have Attack Pattern Beta 1, which is a debuff on your currently selected target. Then we have Cannon Scatter Volley 2, which is a weapons buff to all cannons or turrets. Now, you can see on this build that there is a severe lack of tactical bridge officer stations. So on other build videos that you've seen me do, normally we would have something like 2 lieutenant commander stations. 2 lieutenant commander stations. So, you know, Attack Team 1, Attack Pattern Beta 1, Cannon Scatter Volley 2. Attack Team 1, Attack Pattern Beta 1, Cannon Scatter Volley 2. So we have 2 sets of everything, and we can alternate from one to the other. Okay? But this ship, you don't. It's a cruiser, okay? So it's a big, fat, heavy ship. Its commander station is an engineer. So what you would typically do is, in order to overcome this problem of having a reduced number of tactical stations, you do a build that is known as Ox to Bat, okay? And what Ox to... We'll come to that in a minute. Right, we'll start off with this engineer commander station. We have emergency power to shields 1, which is a shield heal. Then we have auxiliary power to emergency battery 1. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute or two. Then we have evade target lock 3. Pretty self-explanatory. You become untargetable for whatever length of time. Then we have directed energy modulation. Plus 10% energy weapon shield penetration for 30 seconds. Plus 10 weapon armor penetration for 30 seconds. Our Lieutenant Commander Engineering has 1 Engineering Team 1, which is hull heal. Then we have another auxiliary power to emergency battery 1. Then we have reverse shield polarity 2. Basically, when taking energy weapon damage, you reverse the polarity of your shields, and instead of taking damage, you actually recharge your shields. Now, if you use reverse shield polarity in conjunction with Tactical Team 1, you can fully regenerate all of your shields if they're depleted on all 4 facings. So keep that trick in mind, alright? Next up, we have our Lieutenant Science Station. We have a Transfer Shield Strength 1, which is basically a shield heal over time. And then we have a Hazard Emitters 2, which is a hull heal over time. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to pick the right moment to explain auxiliary Ox to Bat to you guys. Alright, we'll come back to it. Alright, we'll come back to it. I think I know where exactly I want to explain it. Bridge officers. Right, here's one, and where's Tuvok? There, right. Our tactical guys are both Romulans. They have the superior Romulan operative trait, which is plus crit chance and crit severity. They are obtained from the Fleet Embassy for 80,000 fleet credits apiece. Very expensive, but very good. If you were going purchasing these guys, so whatever amount of tactical stations you have, if you have 1 tactical station, you only need 1 Romulan tactical officer from the embassy. If you have 3 tactical stations, you want to go for three of them. But there is only 1 bridge officer at the Fleet Embassy that actually has the superior Romulan operative trait. And there's a little bit of a bug in it, okay? So when you go to the vendor, and the vendor's located in the operations center, when you go to the vendor, you want to look at the rare or blue, alright, the blue quality, male tactical Romulan bridge officer. You don't want to go for the very rare, which is the purple. You actually want to go for the blue one, the rare one, alright? And it's the male, not the female, tactical bridge officer. When you purchase him and you put him onto your active roster, he will turn purple, because if you look at these guys, look, they're purple quality, alright? So it's a little bit of a bug in the game that's actually a really good thing, because the purple guys don't have the superior Romulan operative trait, and I think they're like 160,000 fleet credits apiece. So it's actually a bargain, what's actually happened. So it's great. Okay, tactical bridge officers. We have a Jem'Hadar, which I've got from the Jem'Hadar Vanguard bridge officers. He comes with the Engineered Soldier, which is plus all weapon damage, crit chance, and crit severity. Freaking awesome. Then we have Nausicaan, which has the Pirate trait, plus all weapon damage and starship stealth. You can get a free Nausicaan on the Federation side if you reach rank 4 in diplomacy in the duty officer commendation diplomatic. That's how you can get that guy. And finally then we have Mr. Potato Head, which also has the Pirate trait, but he also has Efficient. Granted, we're not benefiting from Efficient because it's plus 7.5 Starship Warp Core efficiency, improves power levels when low, doesn't really apply to us all that much. But a little bit, just not much. He comes from the story mission Alliances, and that is in the Delta Quadrant story arc, which should be... there we are, Alliances. There's the mission, Delta Quadrant story arc. Okay, that's bridge officer stations. Next we are going to talk about duty officers. Right, so active space. First up we have the Warfare Master, space increased damage versus all. This guy comes from the Gamma recruitment event. Again, depending on when you're playing this or watching this, you may or may not have had a chance to partake in the Gamma recruitment event, so you may or may not have access to this duty officer. But if we look at his stats, plus 10% all damage. Freaking awesome. Absolutely brilliant. Next up, we have Shield Distribution Officer. Attack pattern beta restores hull when firing. This guy can be purchased from the Delta Quadrant Duty Officer pack. Of course, it's on, it's a chance of getting him in the, you have no guarantee that you're going to get him, but that's the Duty Officer pack that he comes from. A really good Duty Officer. Then we have 3 technicians, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. After that, then we have an astrometric scientist, which is a recharge time reduction on all transwarp abilities, and they're currently going for about 300k on the exchange, but you can get a free one if you do the Harami Cluster duty officer assignment chain. So you go here, there was an assignment, a 7-part assignment chain. You complete all 7 steps, and then it unlocks a brand new mission. Okay, and this mission appears. What is it? It's once every 8 hours or once every 12 hours. I can't remember. If you get a crit, you get a free purple astrometric scientist from this new mission that has been unlocked. It's titled something like Support Harami Cluster Colonization Efforts, something along those lines. That's the title of the mission. It's pretty easy to spot because if we open up our duty officer, let's have a look at see this icon here. All right, it will have one of those icons representing that it comes with a chance of getting a duty officer. All right, or no, that you will get a duty officer. You have to get a crit in order to get the purple astrometric scientist, and you can farm this as much as you like. You can keep on farming forever and a day and keep on getting these astrometric scientists. And just on a little side note, see all of these other ones, all right, every single one of these all have free duty officers in them. Check out my top tips guides and intros into the duty officer system for more information on that. Now, right, we have to talk about the technicians. So, right, the first thing I'm going to talk about is these powers here. Auxiliary power to emergency battery. Basically, in a nutshell, what it does is it takes all of your auxiliary power, okay, which is this one here, and it applies it to your engines, shields, and weapons, like so. See them all jump up? They all jumped up in levels, okay? So that's what auxiliary to emergency battery does. You only need rank 1. You don't benefit anything from going with rank 2 or rank 3. Right, so that's what it does. Now, there is a secondary effect, okay? If you have 3 purple technicians on your active roster, okay? Every time you use auxiliary power to emergency battery, with 3 purple technicians, you get a 30% reduction on all bridge officer ability cooldowns. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to kick off 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, I'm going to kick off those 5 abilities, and once I do that, I'm going to hit this auxiliary power to emergency battery 1, and you will see the cooldowns, all right, be reduced dramatically. All right, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, 27, 26. Look, 16. See that? It reduced all of them by 30%. Okay, and look, we'll do it again here when this one becomes available. Ta-da! They're all up again, except for this one. This one has a 2-minute recharge, but it still reduces it nonetheless. So that's what Ox to Bat build is. Alright? And you use an Ox to Bat build when you're in a ship like this that has a severe lack of tactical bridge officer stations, because you're essentially doubling the amount of tactical bridge officer stations that you actually have by reducing the cooldowns for the abilities. Now, technicians are expensive on the exchange. At the moment, they're going for about 12 million energy credits each. However, remember what we were talking about a little minute ago? About the Harami cluster and the astrometric scientist? Well, if you go up here to the top right hand corner of the beta quadrant, and you do the assignment chain in the Bertrand cluster, excuse me, there is a free purple technician that you can farm over and over and over again here. Again, you have to do a 7-part assignment chain. Takes about a week to complete the assignment chain, and then you have to catch the mission. So the title of the new mission that's unlocked once you've completed all 7 steps is something like Support Colonization Efforts in the Bertrand Cluster. It's something like that. I can't remember it exactly, but anyway. And if you get a crit on that mission, you will get a free purple technician called 10 of 10. And you can farm that mission over and over again like I have here and get 3 purple technicians for free. So this actually hasn't cost me anything. I just farmed them. I should point out that it's not an easy thing to do. It requires regular checking every 4 hours, and you kind of need to have some fairly decent duty officers in order to get that crit, because trying to get that crit is pretty hard. So you could be trying to farm these 3 guys for a couple of quite a few weeks, maybe even a couple of months. Of course, it depends on how much time you can put into the game. You know, somebody who can put in a lot more time in the game is going to, do it a hell of a lot sooner than somebody who only has, 30 minutes to put into the game. Okay, so that is the duty officers, which is everything about the build. Right, Intel chips have an additional ability. This here is gather intel. So when you are in combat, you press this and it applies 1 stack of penetrating scan on a target every 1 second. Target becomes vulnerable after 15 stacks. Weaker enemies require less stacks. 2 self disables cloaking while active. Oh, I forgot to mention that. This ship has a cloak as well. Now, it's only a cloak. It's not a battle cloak, so it's really crap. Meaning, if you're in combat, you can't activate it. You actually have to come out of combat to activate it again, which is really crap. But anyway, once you have gathered your intel, or your 15 stacks, okay, you then can kick off one of these 3 abilities. This one here is damage resistance rating debuff, pretty much. Alright, that's the most important part. This one reduces the damage of your currently selected targets, so their weapons become less effective. And this one holds a target for 5 seconds and also removes Science Bridge Officer buffs. I like this one here because it helps to kill the enemies quicker. So I would alternate between these 2. Alright, and when we go into our patrol here, you will see this, and you'll see what it's like. So yeah, that is the Battlestar Galactica build. So we are going to jump into a patrol now, and we're going to do our favorite Sentinels.
We're in luck.
Alright, we're going to cloak. We're going to activate weapon system efficiency.
Alachi fleet dropping out of warp. They're arming weapons.
Alright, let's get cracking here. Look at that, already blown up. Now, this ship isn't going to win any PvP tournament. Well, you can get about 20, 30k DPS out of this build. Surprisingly, even though it's only turrets that's in it. Alright, believe it or not, you actually can get that much out of it. But this is a fun build, which brings me on to the fun factor rating. I would give this ship probably 4 warp cores out of 5 for a fun factor rating. I have had so much fun in this ship playing it as a Battlestar Galactica build. It is just absolutely awesome. Yeah, big shout out to Crypti Cop for coming up with the premise for this build. It's been a lot of fun. I really like it. It's a lot of fun. Right, let's buff up here again and take these guys out. But yeah, you know, as you've seen the build, you know, it's not fully upgraded. You can max it out further, and you know, you can use different starship traits to get even higher damage. But you know, this is a budget build series, and this is a lot of fun to play. And yeah, like I said, I give a 4 out of 5 is the rating I give for it. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and kudos to Crypti. You can see, like, I mean, it's Battlestar Galactica.
All right, we have 1 satellite left to deploy.
I just love doing broadsides on it, even though they're all turrets. But you know, doing broadsides and just seeing all of those turrets firing one after another is just so cool. I love it. It's so much fun. This is a lot of fun to play this build. Alrighty. I love it.
Another Alachi fleet. We're going after satellite.
All right. Let's see if we can cloak up again here. All right. Buff up. All we're missing now is a couple of Vipers and Scar, and yeah, we're all set.
getting
Okay,
readings from the
and then we
satellite
move
now.
on to the final
Looks
group.
like an Alachi flagship.
I want to target this guy. And see, the beautiful thing about the turrets is you can keep on moving, and your weapons never, they never go out of firing arc, which is brilliant. It's fantastic. So there we are. There's the
Getting
budget
lots
build.
of good data. The Alachi.
Okay, we are going to leave. Looks like we're going to warp into that planet. Oh no. We missed it. We missed it. Good stuff. So, as usual, there is a link to this build below in the description for this video. If you guys have any requests for builds, feel free to leave a comment. And if I have the ship, I will endeavor to do a build on that particular ship. Yeah, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thanks a million for watching, folks. I really, really appreciate your support. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And my name is Winters, and I'll catch you next time. So until then, adios.